to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora inside of the Cafe Kubal studios. You know that we're here every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern time, where sports meets life. You're watching and listening on youtube.com and facebook.com, both /Wake Up Call DT, facebook.com /Live Now DT, and you're listening worldwide on mixlr.com /Wake Up Call DT and on wakeupcalldt.com. This gentleman was with me last week, a little over a week ago, when we were talking about going into the Sunyac Tournament that they got to host as the #1 seed. Well, since then, they won their games in the Sunyac Tournament, won the Sunyac, and are moving forward here in NCAA Division III men's basketball to the national tournament, but not before he and his staff were voted as the coaching staff of the year in the Sunyac. So, with that being said, Jason Leone, head coach of Oswego State Lakers men's basketball, welcome back.
Hey, Dan, I appreciate the kind words. Happy to be back.
And it's awesome. I mean, it's incredible to see, in our conversation that we had, as it always is, it was basketball, it was football, it was life, it was a little bit of everything. And you just, were calm, cool, and collected. Bring me into the Sunyac tournament that you got to host and those games that you were in that I got to watch from the far. Under the weather, I wasn't there. But I wanted to be so bad. I know I texted you before it, and I got to pay attention to it. So bring me into the Sunyac.
So really high leverage situation, probably more than I let on when you and I had coffee last week. I wasn't sure we were going to get in because of our lack of regionally ranked wins. And quite frankly, out of the 5 times that we've won it, I don't know if our team has played any better than what we played in the tournament. So we had 2 really lopsided wins, which I wasn't expecting, but and it wasn't because the opposition, they were bad teams. It was really how we played. So I was really happy for the players. You see commercials. There's no greater trophy in sports than cutting down the nets, right? And being able to do that with this team was an incredible feeling. I was really happy, and it's 10 years, 5 times to do it 5 times in 10 years is an incredible accomplishment for our program. So I'm really happy for everybody involved.
Yeah, and to see what you did in those 2 games, like you said, 2 lopsided victories, which didn't say anything about your opposition or just how well you played. Is it hard to keep your team focused after winning games by such a large margin? When you win by like 30 plus, do you find it hard to kind of rally the troops to get ready for the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, that's a great thought. Great question. It's been, truth be told, it's been difficult a couple times this year, but not as much as you would think. Okay. We've had a couple points during the year where we haven't played well and still won by double figures, and that's a good problem to have. But it's certainly, when you're dealing with 18 to 21-year-olds, I think your thought process is right on, Dan. I think you've got to make sure they understand that you can play poorly and win, and then you can play well and lose. So it's always been about process for us, and how we handle that is we have to tell them truth, and sometimes the truth is in a video. Sometimes it's in, practice or whatever. It's not necessarily just with the result on a scoreboard. So that could be a challenge. You hear all the things when teams win a lot of games. It's like, well, you haven't been in a close game in a while. And all those things are valid concerns. As coaches, we're wired in a way where it's like, okay, how can we get beat? What can we do as a stopgap from preventing learning a lesson because we lose? So all those things have been in play this year, but I'm not trading the 25 wins back. I can tell you that.
No, and I understand that completely. And looking at the fact that this team has a record of 25-2, what have these 27 games taught you? What have you learned about this team that's going to help you coach them better as you step into the NCAAs?
To take a step back as the coach, we're at this point in the season, I got a big enough sample size where I think we're talented. I've got a pretty good handle on what our strengths are. And I think, again, this time of year, it becomes more and more about the players. And kind of taking your foot off the gas as a coach. And I think sometimes as coaches, it comes from a good place. You want to help your team, but sometimes that comes in the framework of information overload. So, I think keeping things simple and knowing when to take your foot off the gas as a coach and make sure they get proper mental and physical rest, I think is a big part of this time of year. And you've got to have trust. You've got to trust that the players will do their jobs. So those are some learning lessons that I've come to find out about this year's team. How do you
aid the team in having proper mental rest? What do you do in the respect of focusing on the mental?
I think when they make mistakes, you got to lay off them a little bit, at this time of year. We should, as coaches, we should have gathered enough information to know what the team's personality is and what their DNA is at this point. I think collaborative thinking is important. I think talking to my assistants, talking to the players, like, how you feeling? How you doing? What do you think about these certain things? I don't think we're doing this great. What do you think? I think the more ownership you give them deeper into the season, I think the better results you'll get in terms of the relationship building piece between players and coaches.
And for your staff, a Sunyac Coaching Staff of the Year, I know if it was called Coach of the Year, you would talk about your staff because I know how you are, but it's called Coaching Staff of the Year. So I'd love to take this time to shout out your staff members individually and why you believe you got Coaching Staff of the Year.
The first and foremost, it started with my assistant last year, who's since moved on to a job where he's getting paid a little bit more. Our positions aren't full-time positions at Oswego. So James Holmes, who's now the full-time assistant at RPI, they're actually in the tournament too. He did an incredible job recruiting last year. This whole thing starts with players, right? And we had a really good recruiting year in a year where, you really had to be resourceful in how you did that part of your job because, attendance at high school games was iffy and budgets were iffy last year. So he deserves a lot of credit for the job he did with recruiting. Bill Farden has been my volunteer assistant. We've worked together now all 10 years that I've been at Oswego. I can't imagine a scenario doing this without him. We're great compliments to each other. I've learned a lot about coaching offensive basketball from him. Learned a lot about building relationships from him, and just the way that he commands respect without having to raise his voice is a pretty impressive thing to me. Every younger coach deserves to have somebody that's older than them, that's seen more than them. I think it's been a great learning experience for me working with Bill. So he's been unbelievable. And then my two paid assistants, Derek Cahill, affectionately known as the D-Train. He's an Oswego native. He's been wanting to get into college coaching since I met him when he was in high school. So this is his first year doing it. He's done a great job in every area of our program. And then Jake Pritchard was a student assistant for us during his undergraduate years and has moved into this new role where he's in a paid position now and as he attains his master's degree. So everybody has played a big part in this. I'm happy that they have renamed the award after the Coaching Staff of the Year. So, especially my younger assistants, it gets them something they can put on their resume because they most of the time want to become head coaches at this level. So it can help them. And it truly is a team effort. So there's no way I could do any of the things that we do with our program without them.
Yeah, and it's an incredible accomplishment to see what you've been able to do. There's been so much success. I know that you're focused in and locked in for your first game that you have coming up here, which is going to be up against Hood College. Just what you could tell me about as we head into the weekend here, what you know about Hood and just what you have seen as you step into the NCAA Division III tournament with the opportunity at a national championship.
Well, first part of your question, Hood is a very unique team. So if you watched the Houston Rockets with James Harden and D'Antoni, they were a very analytic-based team. And watching this team play, obviously at a lower level in Division III, they play a very similar style. They on average take 34.9 threes per game. making 13 of them. They've got 2 twin brothers that are exceptional scorers. One of them was the player of the year in their league, averaging 25 points a game in league play. So it's a systematic approach that we can't totally replicate in our practices. So that's a scary part of the game, because they literally sometimes set screens on the ball, sometimes fake the screen, and it's like a fire drill. They're running all over the place behind the 3-point arc, trying to get 3-point shots, and the ones they miss, they're trying to track down and throw them back out again for another 3. So it's a very unique style of play that we haven't seen before. So that'll be a big part of the game, is how quickly we're able to adjust and communicate on defense. That's going to be a big part of things. So it'll be a challenging game. The Division III tournament, as we talked before, is very unique because most teams have had to win conference tournaments just to get in, which provides its own set of pressure, and it means that these teams are not an easy out, when they get in, and people play with a lot of confidence. But we have a good team too. I'm very confident with this group going in. We'll be ready to go. Result aside, we've had a great year, and there's not anybody I would want to go into battle with than this particular group of guys.
A decade at Oswego, and you have had tremendous success. Just the sustainability of that. We've spoken about that before, how you've continued to keep this going. And secondly to that, recruiting during the pandemic, because you said that obviously it starts with recruiting, just how you found success in recruiting in such a unique way.
So the consistency is probably the thing in our program that I'm most proud of. It's really hard when you're circled on everybody's schedule. Any coach would tell you this, to continue to, I think this is 7 NCAA tournaments in the last 11 years, which is the most sustained success of any program at our level in New York State. So it's just really hard to do. I mean, it takes an incredible amount of focus, off-season training, recruiting successes, the baton from a leadership perspective being passed from senior class to senior class, and overcoming adversity, being the team that's circled on everybody's schedule and still playing well. It's just really hard to sustain that, especially without scholarships. So that's a big deal. From a recruiting perspective, the second part of your question, you have to rely on other people. I have to rely on assistant coaches. We have to rely on high school and AAU coaches throughout New York State to help us make proper evaluations when we couldn't see people in person, players in person, to evaluate them as much as we normally do. The transfer portal is, like it or not, it's a necessary part of recruiting right now.
Yeah.
So all those things played a role, and you got to have, I don't care what anybody says, you got to have a little bit of luck in recruiting too. Not everybody bats 1,000 in their evaluations. So we had a year where we had a little bit of luck, where guys that we thought were good ended up being maybe a little bit better than what we initially anticipated. And we filled the proper holes with transfers that we needed to fill in. And here we are.
And outside of Jordan Brown from Holly Springs, North Carolina, we're seeing all New York on the Oswego State Lakers roster. And I see that you have reached out into Queens and Staten Island. Just what you could say about recruitment in that area.
Yeah, so Staten Island, there's a high school program down there that we've had a long-standing relationship with, St. Peter's Boys High School. There's a high school coach there, Charlie Driscoll. Other than my own high school coach, I'm probably closer with him than any coach in New York State. They're going down when I was a young coach and watching his practices and watching the way that he coaches. There were just so many similarities that aligned with the way that I do things. It's nothing that's right or wrong about either program. I just, it was just happenstance that I went down and spent a lot of time with this guy and watched the way his teams play. And I said, there's just so many similarities here. And then the connection that I built with players, and he had players that ended up coming up here, and every kid I've had from his program has been an all-league player for us. So success breeds success, right? So you have guys that come up, have a really good experience, get good degrees, have great lives after basketball, enjoy their experience here, and then, the train starts, So Staten Island's also a part of New York City where you've got a lot of people, middle-class incomes, that, SUNY is a great value for them from a perspective of paying for college. So there's a lot of things that align there. And by nature, you're going to recruit a lot downstate because those are more populated areas. So there's going to be more players down there to look at. So that's one part of our recruiting. But yes, we've had a lot of success down in that particular area.
That coming from Jason Leone, Oswego State Lakers men's basketball heading to, once again, the national tournament here for the NCAA Division III on the men's side. Jason, as always, I am so appreciative of your time. You always find time for me. I still remember being in my apartment years ago, and it was a crazy snowstorm outside. I was hoping you guys would just play because of travel and whatnot. And I remember just running in there and every single game, and you kept winning. And I said, every game you win, I'm getting you on the show. As far as you go, we're going to talk every time. And sure enough, we did. And I got the mic going, and it's snowing outside. And I'm like, Jay, are you okay? I was like, did you get where you needed to go? And getting to do the show. So, I mean, you've always been great to me. And all those years ago, you were going to the tournament, and here you are again. So I'm happier.
And you to me as well. I remember talking to you in the locker room one time as my team was warming up out there, and we connected real quick over the phone minutes before we went out for a Sweet 16 game out in Rock Island, Illinois.
Yeah, and you've always spent time. You've become such an awesome friend of mine. I'm so happy for you, and it warms my heart when I see Oswego succeed because of you and many coaches out there have made it near and dear to me. So big shout out to what you guys are doing. I know you're just getting started here in the new season, but I'm hoping for great things. You're always welcome here on the show. I hope that we get many more conversations and many less blizzards. So
Amen.
Always good stuff, Jason. And final note here from you. What do you want to say to Laker Nation and just to those that have supported you all the way through?
I would thank them as well for all their support, the amount of phone calls, emails, texts that I've gotten over the past month in particular. As we talked about at the beginning of the interview, that the deeper you go into the season, the excitement expands. People show up, and that's the way. This is a great time of year for our sport, right? March Madness, and this tournament, Dan, it feels the exact same for a Division III player as a Division I player. It really does. We'll show up to Swarthmore College tomorrow, and the way the gym's set up, the way the cameras are set up, we might not get the viewership that the Division I tournament does, but these student athletes, when they walk into the gym, they'll know there's a little bit something extra special about playing in this tournament. So I would thank all of our fans and all the people that follow us. They deserve this just as much as our players. This truly has been a team effort. So I appreciate all the support that we get, not only from the Oswego, Friends of Oswego basketball, but the Central New York area.
And with 64 teams in the tournament, we know that it feels just like NCAA Division I March Madness as well, with the amount of games it takes to get to the championship game. So as you get set this weekend, Jason, hoping the best for you. Always supporting the Lakers, and thank you so much for all that you've done. And no matter what, we'll be getting a cup of coffee soon, and I would like for there to be some hardware with that. But either way, I'm excited.
Let's do it, buddy.